welcome to this webinar on optimum nutrition and health for kids. So before we dive into the content and before I give a proper introduction of myself, I want to ask you a question. So do you find, or how many of you know that your kids are probably supposed to eat better, but really finds it difficult to actually implement these changes that you know needs to happen? So yes, this is a very common thing, right? So we're living in the information age, and there's a lot of information out there. And in many cases, we know exactly what we're supposed to do to change our own health and our kids' health for the better, but for some or other reason, we're just not doing it. So you're in the right place, because I know exactly what you experience, and this is one of the most important facets in my clinical practice. Because I know how difficult it is to implement these health changes and actually sustain them for good. So I'm Zena le Roux. I'm a functional nutritionist and integrative health coach and an investigative health journalist. And, you know, I work with people who feel stuck and frustrated with their health goals, and who's not interested in quick fixes and fad diets, but who's looking for sustainable change. And I know that it's not just about the plan or the nutrition that you're following. It's about behavior change. It's about your relationship with food, you know, addiction, stress eating, the environment that you're in. There's so many things that plays a role when it comes to sustainable change. And this is what I'm all about. And this is what I'm passionate about figuring out and helping you to break through. And I think specifically when it comes to changing kids' diets, you know, there's a lot of practical barriers that we need to work through, things such as lack of time and exhaustion and child tantrums. And if you're not eating a healthy diet yourself and we don't have support, I mean, there's a lot of things that come into play. So yeah, this is what I love to do. So you are in the right place. Okay. So coming back to today, I'm going to talk to you about the link between your child's digestive system and their mental development, and how that links also with a strong immune system. And then also a few observations around hyperactivity and ADHD and learning and behavioral problems. And then also how you can actually start implementing these changes into your life. And I'll also send through 1 or 2 delicious recipes if you want to start trying this at home. And then also if you need some personal support, my personal support after the talk, I'll share a way that you can do that too. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you, and then we are going to start. Okay, so you know what, childhood is, I find it quite sad if I look at the different, or the, you know, how many kids actually come into my clinical practice, and it doesn't seem like they're having fun, because, you know, when I think of childhood, it's supposed to be fun, it's supposed to be a time of joy, and there's so many kids suffering from, you know, anxiety and depression and things like that, and I find it quite sad. So yeah, in many cases, unfortunately, childhood just doesn't seem like fun anymore. And I'm really passionate about sharing this, because I want kids to be happy and to enjoy yeah, their childhood. So what often happens is, when we think about things like anxiety and depression and symptoms like suffering from ADHD, hyperactivity, things like that, the main treatments are usually drugs or therapy, right? And unfortunately, many health practitioners neglect the role that nutrition and diet plays. So I'm definitely not saying that nutrition is the only thing that we should be paying attention to, but it should also be part of the treatment plan, I find. And you know, I'm a functional nutritionist, so for me, it's really about taking hands with different modalities and different areas of life, and work, you know, bring all these aspects together to really offer sustainable solution to our clients. So Yeah, that's very important to make all of these modalities part of a treatment plan. Okay, so if you think about it, do you find that yes, there is a link between diet and your child's mental development? Have you ever thought about that, or do you find that no, they're worlds apart? And what impact do you think does diet have on your child's brain? You know, how much does it actually impact your child's brain? So I want to start off by explaining this to you by talking about the microbiome. So the microbiome is the bacteria that lives within all of us. And why this is important is because it all started many years ago when Hippocrates, the father of medicine, said all disease starts in the gut. So there's a lot of microbiome that lives within us and mostly in our gut and digestive system. And Hippocrates said that all disease starts in the gut. And today there's a lot of research. There's a lot of, double-blind peer-reviewed articles showing that yes, they won't say all disease, but there's a lot of diseases could be traced back to microbiome and digestive health, and they found around 90% of diseases can be traced back to some imbalance in the gut microbiome. So this is really one of the best things you can do for your child's health, overall health, but also their brain health and their immune health, to keep their gut healthy, right? So this is really such an important thing that you can do. So I'll explain the immune health just now. But let's first look at microbiome and brain health. So let's start out with that. So how does the gut and the stomach and the digestive system, how does it link with the brain, So the main thing that we need to look at here is the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is a bidirectional communication system between the gut and the brain. And it's quite a complex system because it intersects with the immune system, it intersects with the hormonal systems. And this is called the gut-brain relationship. So to think of it in a more practical example would be you might have experienced when you are stressed for an exam or before you do a talk, that your stomach is a little bit upset, right? And it also goes the other way around. So if you haven't eaten for a long time or you had a lot of sugar, you might feel very irritable. So that's where the gut influences the brain, right? And the thing is, we often think of the brain as this governing organ that tells the rest of the body what to do. But yeah, the gut also communicates with the brain a lot, so it's really bidirectional. And like I said, it intersects with the immune system. So around 80% of the immune system is located in the gut. So once again, if your gut is healthy, your immune system will also be healthy, or the chances will be greater that it will be happy. Yes. Okay. Something I really want to encourage you, if you are interested in this topic, is to go read Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride's books. And she wrote The Gaps. The book is called Gaps. It's the Gaps Diet. You might be familiar with that. It's called The Gut and Psychology Syndrome. And then she recently brought out another book called Gut and Physiology Syndrome. So she really links the gut health and psychological and physiological ailments in such a profound way. And she has done decades of research. And in her words, she says, it appears that the child's digestive system holds the key to the child's mental development. This is quite profound. And she also said that, found after many decades of research, that both children and adults with some type of mental disorder or some mental issue, they all have the same dysbiosis or gut imbalances in gut bacteria. So for example, all kids with ADHD seems to have the same gut imbalances. So there is a very direct link between the two. So now you might think, okay, but what can I do about this? How can I fix this? Anything? Do I have control over this? Or is it a genetic thing? Do I get born with the gut microbiome that I have, or is there anything I can do to alter this? So something I find very fascinating is some latest research where they show that there's around 100 times more DNA in our microbiome than there is in our human cells. Some researchers say that it's even more, but I'll stick with the conservative figure today. But yeah, so this is quite revolutionary. So there's 100 times more DNA in the microbiome than there is in our human cells. So this kind of helps us to look at things like genetic disease from a completely different perspective. Because I often have clients coming to me telling me, I've got a genetic disease, there's nothing I can do about this. But if we understand the microbiome correctly, and if this is true that there's more DNA in our microbiome, there's a lot that we can do, because microbiome is mostly influenced by lifestyle, diet, stress, things like that. So if we can influence the gut microbiome, this is revolutionary. We can, this means that there's a lot of genetic diseases and mental health issues that we can treat, prevent, and even cure, right? And it's our choice, greatly, mostly, whether we activate the gene that we might have a predisposition to or not, right? So this is called epigenetics. So if you're interested in this field, you're welcome to go read more about this. But I might have a certain predisposition to a certain genetic disease, and you might not. So obviously, my chances will be more than you of getting that specific disease. But because of the microbiome and because of epigenetics, I can choose, depending on what type of lifestyle I'm leading, whether I'm going to activate that gene or not. Okay, so there's a lot that is in our control that we can do. Okay. So today I'm going to share my top 5 quick tips that I'm going to share with you that you can do today to keep your microbiome, your kids' microbiome or your own microbiome healthy. And weirdly enough, many of these tips also link with, ADHD management and behavioral or learning problems management. So my top 5 tips today is going to include both microbiome and also ADHD, and I'll explain a little bit about both in each case. Okay, so number 1 is to eat real food. And you might think, oh my goodness, this is so simple. Really, did I spend all this time to watch this talk and this is what you're telling me? But yeah, this is so profound. Eating real foods and avoiding your processed and refined sugars and eliminating the food additives is huge. This could make such a huge difference in your and your kids' life. So unfortunately, sugar and highly processed foods feeds bad bacteria. And I always think of the picture of the white wolf and the black wolf, and you get to choose which one you are feeding, and it's the same with the gut bacteria. You get to choose whether you're feeding the bad bacteria or the good bacteria. And unfortunately, the more bad bacteria there is, the more it will interfere with nutrient absorption. And nutrient deficiencies has been linked to ADHD and many other diseases. So obviously, we want to feed the good bacteria. And unfortunately, many of these food-like substances that we get in processed food, when something reads like a chemical handbook and not a cookbook, it might activate the immune system because it thinks this is a foreign substance. I don't know what to do with it. It must be an invader. So I'm going to activate the immune system, and the immune system's weapon of choice is inflammation. This causes inflammation in the body. And yes, unfortunately, if there is inflammation in the gut, it also escapes into the systemic circulation, and it might then also impact the brain or cause inflammation in the brain. And I'm working closely with a neurophysiologist, and she often does the QEEGs where she sees, measures the frequencies of brain waves, and she can very directly see, or she can see whether there is inflammation in the brain or not. And most of the time, it is because of some inflammation in the gut as well. So yeah, this we see quite often. So yeah, my advice would really be to try to stick to whole, real foods as much as you can. And I know that it's not always easy. I know that it's not always practical and it's time consuming, all of those things. But it could make such a big difference in your child's life. Because, there's some of the colorants and additives that has been linked directly to hyperactivity. I know specifically the E102 is the yellow color. It has been directly linked to hyperactivity. And there's many research showing that around 90% of kids benefit, with hyperactivity or ADHD benefit when you eliminate foods containing artificial colors, flavors, and preservatives. So, yeah. Okay, number 2 is to avoid food sensitivities. Also quite a challenging one, but I just want to quickly explain the difference between a food allergy and a food sensitivity. So a food allergy is where you have something like a peanut allergy and you have an immediate reaction. So if you're eating the peanut, you have some extreme reaction where your tongue swells up or your eye pops out. Now I'm always thinking of that movie Hitch. I don't know if you've seen it, but they have quite an exaggerated image. Well, that image kind of sticks in my head where he eats, I think, seafood and he gets this swollen tongue and an eye that hangs. And yeah, so I always get that image when I think of that. But yeah, that's a food allergy. And then there's food sensitivity. So food sensitivities are, I can explain it by looking at something like a cup. When there's a drop of water that goes in and another and another and another. It doesn't necessarily cause any havoc, but as soon as the cup spills out, that's when you experience symptoms. So you could be experiencing symptoms maybe only in a week or two's time. And it's quite interesting that there's such a wide range of symptoms that you could be experiencing. It could be anything from rings around the eyes, sniffling, a lot of mucus, tonsillitis, itches, rashes, vomiting, diarrhea, stomach ache, winds, hyperactivity, poor concentration, sleeplessness, bedwetting, asthma, respiratory infections. There's so many things that food sensitivities could link to. So it's so worth it to just try it and to see what happens. And I know we're not talking about weight loss today, but so many people are interested in it today. So something I see, I just have to mention it here, is something I often see is when people remove food sensitivities from their diet, they also tend to lose a lot of weight. And I've seen some clients losing up to 3 kilograms in 1 week because of this. So why this happens is because if there's one substance of something that's irritating the body could react in different ways, but one way the body could react is putting a layer of fat around it to try to protect you against it. Another one is to retain water, once again to try to protect you from it. So for every 1 unit of something that's irritating the body, it usually stores 3 units of water. So the moment you release or stop having these foods, your body gets the chance to actually let go of the water and the fat and everything that's trying to protect you against it. So, I mean, it's really something that you can try. It's really something that could make a huge difference in your life. And, there's different ways that you can do this. So you could do the food sensitivity testing, or you can do an elimination diet, which is quite strict. So I know that's might be quite difficult. Or you could just choose one food and eliminate for 2 weeks and see what the impact is. But the good news is that children, especially, well, anyone actually, can respond very rapidly once that substance is removed. So you can, anything from 1 to 10 days, you can see the improvement. So it's really worth it. And remember, it's not a life sentence. So I've often seen that, if there's something that's irritating you and you're taking it away and you kind of heal the gut a little bit and keep it away for a few weeks or months sometimes, you can reintroduce it at a later stage. Maybe not every day, but having it maybe once in every 4 days could be tolerable. Okay, tip number 3 is to balance your blood sugar. So the more uneven your blood sugar supply, the more uneven your mood. Okay, so that dips in blood sugar levels have been linked to dips in cognitive abilities and concentration, and has also been linked with aggressive behavior. So if your child is angry and irritable and can't concentrate, that this is really something you can consider. So how you balance your blood sugar, it's a bit more complex to explain this. I'm not going to go into too much detail now, but eating slow releasing carbohydrates. So you might be familiar with low GI foods. So I prefer GL, so this is glycemic load. It's a more complex way of measuring what the effect of a certain food has on your blood sugar, what the effect of a certain food has on your blood sugar. So another thing to consider here is to include as much fiber and more protein, because that kind of slows down the glucose absorption. So don't only eat, your refined sugars, rather do complex carbohydrate or whole carb, and include a lot of fiber and protein as well. Okay, and then tip number 4 is to eat enough fats. So this is kind of starts out with the whole calorie hypothesis, and why many people are getting this wrong is because of the calorie hypothesis. And all calories are not created equal. So if you think of 100 calories of Skittles and 100 calories of walnuts, it's not going to be metabolized the same in the same way in the body. So the Skittles will be turned into glucose, and glucose will be stored as fat if it's not used as energy, while walnuts will be used to produce neurotransmitters, hormones, nerves, all types of different things. And there's a lot of fiber in there, so it helps keep you regular. A lot of nutrients and vitamins and minerals that your body can use in different ways. So it's definitely not the same. It's not going to have the same impact in your body, and in terms of fat storage and weight gain, it's not going to have the same impact. And unfortunately, because of the calorie hypothesis, the fats obviously have more calories than carbs and proteins. So this means that a lot of people have been eliminating a lot of fats from their diets. And this is one of the worst things that they could do, because 60% of your brain is made from fat if you take the water away. So eating the right fats really speed up thinking processes in the brain. And yes, your neuroreceptors are made from essential fatty acids, so the messages won't be received correctly, and then your child's brain won't be able to respond. So this is crucial. And then there's a very interesting study I've seen on the amount of DHA. So that's a type of omega-3 fat in the umbilical cords of newborn babies, and how that correlates with their mental abilities at age 8. Obviously, there's a lot of other things that also influence this, but quite interesting to note that it's not just about the kid's diet, but also about what mom's eating while she's pregnant, right? And if mom is fat conscious or fat phobic, it has such a big impact on your child's mental abilities at a later stage. And then it's also been shown that essential fats have a calming effect on children with hyperactivity. And they also often have essential fat deficiencies. So it kind of links from all directions. So very important to include as much essential fats into your kids' diet, if possible. Your oily fish, things like sardines, and your flax seeds and pumpkin seeds, walnuts, chia seeds. And flax is quite an easy thing if you grind it up. It's nice to just put in a stew or in a salad or veggies or wherever, so your child won't even know it's there, because it doesn't really taste like anything. So it's an easy, sneaky way to get it into their diets. Okay, and then the last tip that I'm going to share with you today is to add variety. So I see a lot of my clients, they eat the same thing every single day. I guess this is because of convenience or time limits or exhaustion, I don't know, lack of creativity. But unfortunately, if you're eating the same things, you're not getting a variety of nutrients into your diet. And we need a lot of different nutrients. And so people with ADHD, we've seen that there's common nutrient deficiencies, especially zinc and magnesium. And low levels of magnesium causes fidgeting and anxious restlessness, insomnia, coordination problems. So yeah, really a good idea to eat as much different foods as possible. Okay, so the gut microbiome feeds on a wide variety of foods. So if you shouldn't be eating the same thing every single day, because it needs a variety of foods in able to flourish. And I know this is something that might be difficult for your kid to add, but I want to also mention it here, is to add fermented foods. So fermented foods, I know the sauerkrauts and the kimchis and things like that might be a little bit challenging, but things like yogurt, unless they have a dairy deficiency or a dairy food sensitivity, it might not a good idea. But kefir, for example, there are water-based ones as well, or kombucha that contains a lot of good bacteria will be an excellent thing, and it's really sweet, so kids might love it. Okay, so that's the last tip. And then, so like I mentioned in the beginning, it's not just about the information. We know, most of us knows exactly what to do. It's not about that we don't know what to do. It's really difficult for us to implement it. And that's why I want to, just touch on that as well. I know it's much more complex and it's much more individual for each of you. So you might be thinking, yeah, sure, Zena, thanks for the advice, but I have a really fussy eater, or you don't understand. My kid definitely won't have those. She or he only eats spaghetti and chocolate yogurt, so if you relate to that, there are some things that we can look at around these types of things. And I will give you one or two things that I've seen and that has worked in the past. But obviously, this is a very individual situation. So it depends on your specific situation and what type of support you need to get through that. But something that I've seen a lot that helps is if you lead by example. So your child needs to see that you are consuming these foods too. And I know you are doing the absolute best that you can. But yeah, it's important. If mom or dad is eating all the junk food and the sugars and the chocolates and they're not allowed, then obviously they're not going to want to do it. So very important to want to make these changes and lead a healthy lifestyle yourself as well. Okay, and don't worry about the occasional sugar. When they are going to school or spending time with friends at a party and they're having some sugar, it's not the end of the world. And you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to do everything right all the time. It's just going to add more stress to your life. So if you sometimes have to give them a processed bar or some chocolate muffin or whatever it is, because of time constraints or whatever the reason, that's okay too. As long as you try to do your very best most of the time and give them proper nutrients when you do have control over that. And then also remember that the taste for sugar is acquired over time, and it's acquired through eating sweeter and sweeter foods. But it can also be lost. So, you can gradually reduce the level of sweetness and foods in drinks. And then I often see that people lose their taste for sugar. And I've seen it with many clients. If you balance their blood sugar and you kind of reduce the amount of sugar that they're having slowly but surely, they almost can't even tolerate, the foods that they were having in the beginning. It's just too sweet. So this definitely is possible. So something practical that I would recommend, especially with something like fruit juice, is to, dilute it with water. Just add a little bit of water, and next time add a little bit more water, and up until there's around 50% fruit juice and 50% water. Just so the sugars are releasing a bit slower, and yeah, they kind of lose their taste for the sugar over time. Okay, and then I want to really help you to think about taking action. You know, there's a lot of things that I talked about today, but it's so easy to just hear the information and that's it, and wow, it was interesting, and you never think about it again. So I really want you to think about this, and to, you know your life, and you know what your week looks like, and to choose one thing. One thing I've mentioned today, maybe you're already doing all of them, or maybe you are not doing one of them, and that's also okay. But is there one small step that could get you closer to where you want to be and where you want your kids' health to be? So yeah, you know what your week looks like, you know what your life looks like. So what's very important here is, if you decide, for example, I really want to make or prepare more home cooked meals, or I want to see how my child responds on some homemade brownies, with raw honey, made with raw honey instead of your refined sugars, or whatever it is. You have to always think of what needs to be put in place for this to actually happen. Is it that I need to do meal prep? Do I need to ask for help? Do I need to learn to say no more, to have more time to do these types of things? Because if you think of it in the end, yes, it's a lot of extra effort that you need to do, but I really do think that that effort is worth it if you think of what impact that could have on your kids' life and how that could really give them a head start in life. So there's that old saying, by doing the same old things, you get the same old results. So if you keep on doing what hasn't been working, you'll get the same old results. So yes, that's it from my side, and you are welcome, if you have any questions, to go to my website, www.zenaleroux.co.za, or send me an email. The details will be provided, and yes, I hope it was helpful, and thank you so much for watching.